the world doesn't give you time to pack. A wildfire moves at 30 miles an hour. A flood doesn't wait for you to grab your gear bag. And when society collapses, whether it's a grid-down scenario, a mass evacuation, or something worse, you will not be standing in front of your safe debating calibers. You will have 60 seconds, maybe less, and in that 60 seconds, you can grab one rifle. Just one. That rifle has to hunt deer at 200 yards to keep you fed. It has to reach out to 400 yards to stop a threat before it reaches your camp. It has to be light enough that after 5 days on foot, you're still carrying it, not dragging it. And it has to be fast enough in close quarters that you come out the other side alive. That is the Scout rifle. A concept born from the mind of Colonel Jeff Cooper, one of the greatest tactical minds in American firearms history. One rifle, every mission, no compromises. Today we're counting down the top 7 SHTF Scout rifles that can genuinely replace your entire arsenal. And stay with me until the end, because rifle number 1 weighs under 6 pounds, and its heaviest caliber configuration, it generates enough energy to punch through light vehicle armor. That's not marketing, that's physics. Let's get into it. Number 7, Ruger Gunsite Scout Rifle. If Jeff Cooper drew a blueprint and handed it to an American manufacturer and said, "Build this, make it affordable, make it run," the result would look almost exactly like the Ruger Gunsite Scout Rifle. This is where most people start their Scout rifle journey. And honestly, there are worse places to start. The Ruger Gunsite Scout comes in at right around 7 pounds, unloaded technically the ceiling of Cooper's original weight spec, but it earns every ounce. The barrel is 16 1/10 inches threaded at the muzzle and paired with a forward-mounted Picatinny rail that puts your optic right where Cooper intended, out over the barrel away from your eye, giving you that wide peripheral awareness that makes a Scout rifle fundamentally different from a traditional hunting setup. But here's what most people miss about this gun. It ships with ghost ring iron sights, fully adjustable, robust, and zeroed right out of the box. In a world where batteries die and scopes fog up, that backup sight system is not a nice to have. It's a lifeline. You can run this rifle on day 1 of a collapse with 0 accessories and still be effective at distance. The action feeds from detachable box magazines, 10-round factory mags, and it will also accept M14 pattern magazines if you need to scavenge deeper into a long-term scenario. The 3-Hote Winchester cartridge at Chambers is one of the most proven, most available, and most capable rounds on the planet. From deer-sized game to barrier penetration in a defensive situation, 3-Hote doesn't ask permission. Where does it fall short? The trigger is workable, but not exceptional. The weight puts it right at the edge of all-day carry comfort, and the fit and finish, while solid and Ruger reliable, is utilitarian rather than refined. This is a truck gun, a working gun, not a showpiece, but in a SHTF scenario, utilitarian is exactly what you want. Parts are available. Gunsmiths know this platform, and the round it fires will be scavenged from nearly every sporting goods store, hunting cabin, and police armory from coast to coast. If you've never owned a Scout rifle and you're building a survival battery from scratch, the Ruger Gunsite Scout is the most logical starting point on this entire list. Cooper would nod. Maybe not smile, he had high standards, but he would nod. Number 6, Mossberg MVP Scout. Now here's where the list starts getting tactically interesting. The Mossberg MVP Scout does something no other bolt-action Scout rifle on this list does. In its 5.56 NATO configuration, it feeds directly from standard R15 and 16 Stanag magazines. The same magazines that are in every military base, every police cruiser, every prepper's storage room across North America. Think about what that means in a genuine long-term grid-down scenario. You're not looking for obscure proprietary mags. You're not hoping some small manufacturer is still running. You walk up to any abandoned law enforcement vehicle, any National Guard post, any fellow survivor who ran an R platform, and your bolt-action Scout rifle eats their ammunition. That is a logistic advantage that is almost impossible to overstate. The MVP Scout runs about 6.5 pounds lighter than the Ruger, with a 16.25-inch barrel and the same forward rail Scout setup. The Mossberg Flex trigger system is adjustable, and while it won't win any precision bench rest competitions, it's more than adequate for the 400-yard performance envelope Cooper defined for this role. In 3-HOT configuration, it accepts standard Monia and 25 pattern magazines, again maximizing your ability to scavenge compatible ammunition and magazines from the field. 2 caliber options, 2 massive compatibility ecosystems, 1 rifle. The price point is where Mossberg really makes its case. You're looking at street prices consistently below $600, making this the most accessible rifle on this entire list. When you factor in what you're saving on the platform itself, you can invest that money into training ammunition stockpile or a quality optic. The criticisms are real. The trigger needs work out of the box. The stock feels plastic in a way that reminds you exactly what you paid for it. And the 3-HOT version, while functional, does not offer anything dramatically different from the Ruger at roughly the same price point. But the 5.56 version with R magazine compatibility, that's a unique capability in the bolt-action Scout world. And in a world where logistics determine who survives, unique capabilities matter enormously. Number 5, Steyr Scout. Everything changes here. The Ruger was inspired by Cooper's philosophy. The Mossberg borrowed from it. But the Steyr Scout, this rifle, was built with Cooper. He sat down with Steyr's engineers. He argued over every specification. He signed off on the final design. This is not a rifle that meets the Scout rifle standard. This rifle is the Scout rifle standard made physical. At 6 6/10 pounds, the Steyr Scout is lighter than the Ruger while packing in a level of integrated engineering that nothing else on this list can match. The bipod is built directly into the stock, not clamped on, not an afterthought built in. The spare magazine is stored inside the buttstock itself. You reach back, press a button, and your backup 10 rounds are right there in the gun. In a high-stress scenario where your hands are shaking and your fine motor skills are compromised, not having to dig through a chest rig for a spare mag is a genuine tactical advantage. The forward-mounted Picatinny rail is of course present, but Steyr went further. The rifle ships with a Steyr-designed low-power variable optic, specifically tuned for the Scout role. You're not adapting a hunting scope or a tactical scope to a Scout platform. The entire optical system was designed around this specific rifle and this specific mission. The trigger is exceptional by bolt-action standards, a clean, consistent break that rewards precision shooting without punishing speed. And the Mannlicher-style stock distributes the rifle's weight in a way that makes it feel more alive in your hands than the numbers on paper would suggest. Now, the hard truths. The Steyr Scout commands a price tag in the $2,000 to $2,200 range. Spare parts and warranty service depend on the Austrian manufacturer in ways that become complicated in a true long-term collapse scenario. And the proprietary magazine system, while ingenious, means you're not scavenging compatible mags from anyone else on the battlefield. But if you can afford it, and if you're building a single rifle survival system with the philosophy that doing it right once costs less than doing it wrong, twice the Steyr Scout. The most complete, most intentional, most purpose-built Scout rifle ever produced. Cooper didn't just endorse this rifle. He helped create it. That matters. Number 4, Springfield Armory Monia Scout Squad. Everything we've talked about so far has been bolt action. And that's deliberate because Cooper's original Scout rifle philosophy was built around the bolt gun. Slower follow-up shots, simpler mechanics, lighter weight, maximum reliability with minimum moving parts. But here's the question Cooper himself wrestled with toward the end of his life. What happens when the threat isn't a deer at 200 yards or a single bad actor at the tree line. What happens when there are multiple threats moving fast, closing distance, and you have 4 seconds to make 3 shots count? That's the Springfield Armory. Monia Scout Squad walks into the room and changes the conversation entirely. The Monia is the civilian version of the U.S. military's M14, a rifle that served American forces from the late 1950s through Vietnam and beyond, and continues to serve in designated marksman roles today. The Scout Squad variant gives you an 18-inch barrel, a forward-mounted scope rail, and the full semi-automatic capability of the M14 platform in a package that, while heavier than everything else on this list, at around 8 8/10 pounds, delivers a follow-up shot capability that no bolt action can match. Let's be direct about what 8 8/10 pounds means on a 500-mile bug-out trek. It means your shoulders know about it by day 2. It means every pound you save elsewhere in your loadout water food shelter gets eaten by the rifle itself. That is a real cost, and you need to go in with eyes open. But here is what you get in return. 20-round detachable box magazines feeding 3-Holt Winchester in a semi-automatic action that was designed, tested, and proven in actual combat. The M14 platform has a reliability record measured in decades of military service across some of the harshest environments on the planet. The trigger, while not a precision bench rest unit, is smooth and consistent in a way that makes fast, accurate fire genuinely achievable under stress. The 18-inch barrel gives up very little velocity compared to a full-length rifle, while keeping the overall package maneuverable enough for vehicle operations and urban movement. And the forward scope rail positions your optic exactly where the Scout philosophy demands out. Over the barrel, both eyes open, full situational awareness even when you're behind the glass. There's a reason experienced preppers and survivalists keep coming back to the Monia despite its weight. Because when the scenario goes from hunting and evasion to active defense, when you're not running from a threat, but holding a position, the ability to send accurate, hard-hitting 3-Holt rounds downrange at a rate that a bolt action simply cannot match becomes the thing that determines whether you're alive. The next morning, this is the wild card on this list. It breaks Cooper's weight rule. It breaks his mechanical simplicity preference, but it brings capabilities to the table that nothing else here can replicate. Whether that trade-off works for your specific situation is a calculation only you can make. And speaking of calculations, I want to stop here for a second, because we're halfway through this list, and I want to ask you something directly. If you had 60 seconds to grab just one rifle from your safe for a 500-mile survival trek on foot, knowing you might need to hunt, knowing you might need to defend, knowing every pound on your back is a decision, which rifle is it? Not your favorite, not the most expensive one you own, the one you would actually grab when the clock is running. Drop in the comments right now the name, the caliber, and one sentence on why. I read every single comment on this channel, and I want to know what this community is actually running, because the answer might surprise you and it might end up influencing a future video. Now, back to the list. We've got 3 rifles left, and I promise you, the last 2 are going to challenge everything you think you know about what a Scout rifle can be. Number 3, Savage Onnit Scout. The Steyr Scout is what you buy when money is not the primary constraint. The Savage Onnit Scout is what you buy when you want everything the Steyr offers in terms of philosophy, and you're willing to accept a few aesthetic compromises to keep $400 in your pocket. Because make no mistake, the Savage Onnit Scout is not a budget rifle with Scout rifle branding slapped on the box. This is a purpose-built Cooper spec platform that earned its place on this list through performance, not marketing. Start with the barrel. 16.5 inches threaded muzzle and Savage's legendary AccuFit stock system that adjusts length of pull and comb height without tools without aftermarket parts, and without a gunsmith. In a world where you might be sharing this rifle with a partner of different build, or where a growing teenager in your group needs to be able to run it effectively, that modularity has real-world value that gets overlooked in calm times and becomes critical in hard ones. The forward-mounted Picatinny rail is present and correct. The detachable box magazine feeds 10 rounds of 3-Hote Winchester reliably and smoothly. And then, there's the trigger, the AccuTrigger Savage's proprietary system that is, by any objective measure, the best factory trigger on any scout rifle at this price point. It's adjustable, it's consistent, and it will outperform triggers on rifles costing twice as much. The accuracy numbers back this up. Savage guarantees sub-M.0A performance from the factory with quality ammunition. In practical terms, that means at 400 yards, outer edge of Cooper's defined engagement envelope for the Scout rifle. The Onnit Scout is putting rounds where you need them, not where you hope they'll go. In a hunting scenario, where one clean shot is the difference between meat and a missed opportunity that matters. In a defensive scenario where a precise shot at distance stops a threat before it reaches your position, it matters even more. What does the Savage give up compared to the Steyr? The integrated bipod is gone, you'll need to add one. The spare magazine in the stock is gone. The overall fit and finish is functional rather than refined. And the weight at 7 1/10 pounds puts it just above the Steyr and right at Cooper's original ceiling. But here's the thing about the Savage Onnit Scout that I think gets underappreciated. Savage has been building accurate, reliable bolt-action rifles in America for over a century. Parts availability, gunsmith familiarity, and warranty support are domestic, no waiting on Austrian or timelines, in a scenario where supply chains are already compromised. In a long-term grid-down situation, that geographic supply chain reality is not a small thing. The working man's precision, that's the Savage Onnit Scout. Everything you need, nothing you don't, and a trigger that'll make you forget you didn't spend twice as much. Number 2 ZZ 527 Carbine 7.62 by 39mm. Now, we break the pattern completely. Every rifle on this list so far has chambered 3-Hote Winchester. There are good reasons for that. 3-Hote is powerful, accurate at distance, and widely available in the American prepper and hunting context. Cooper himself built his entire scout rifle philosophy around that cartridge and its ballistic capabilities. But let me paint you a different picture. The world ends tomorrow, not in America, globally, and in a global collapse scenario, or even in a regional one where normal supply chains are shattered, and you're operating in an environment where military and paramilitary forces are present. The most common rifle cartridge on the face of the earth is not 3-Hote Winchester. It is 7.62 by 39mm, the cartridge that feeds the AK-47, the most produced and most widely distributed firearm in human history. The CZ527 Carbine chambers that round in a bolt action with an 18.5-inch barrel, weighing in at just over 6 pounds, and in its most critical capability, it accepts standard AK-47 magazines. Read that again. A bolt-action Scout format carbine that feeds from the same magazines as the most common military rifle on the planet. The CZ527 action is one of the smoothest, most refined bolt actions available at its price point. A true Mauser-style controlled round feed that extracts cases with a mechanical authority that makes failures to extract essentially a non-event. The trigger is excellent, out-of-the-box crisp, consistent with minimal take-up. Czech Engineering has been producing world-class bolt actions for decades, and the 527 platform shows that heritage in every cycle of the action. Now, the honest conversation about 7.62 by 13 at distance. This cartridge was designed for military use at combat distances, typically under 300 yards. At 400 yards, which is Cooper's stated outer performance boundary for the Scout rifle, The 7.62 by 39 is losing energy and fighting wind, drift in ways that 3-Hote simply doesn't. You are giving up genuine long-range capability by stepping down to this cartridge. But here's the counter-argument. In a real SHTF scenario, how many of your actual engagements, hunting or defensive, are going to happen at 400 yards? Game animals in a survival context are more likely encountered at under 50. Defensive situations in a collapse scenario are overwhelmingly going to occur at distances measured in tens of yards, not hundreds. And at those distances, 7.62 by 39 from a bolt-action CZ527 carbine is more than adequate, accurate, controllable, and fed by magazines you can find anywhere on Earth. This rifle is the disruptor on this list. It challenges the 3-Hote orthodoxy of the scout rifle world. It trades some theoretical long-range performance for a logistics advantage that in certain collapse scenarios is worth more than any ballistic coefficient on paper. Cooper would have opinions about it, strong ones. But Cooper also said, and in paraphrasing, that the best rifle is the one you have maintained with ammunition feeding through it when you need it most. The CZ527 carbine makes that scenario easier to achieve than almost anything else on this list. Number 1. Christensen Arms Ridgeline Scout. We've talked about 7 rifles on this list. Every single one of them makes a compelling case for itself. Every one of them embodies some dimension of Jeff Cooper's scout rifle philosophy. Whether it's the weight discipline of the Steyr, the logistics intelligence of the CZ, or the semi-auto firepower of the Monia. But number 1 has to be the rifle that takes everything Cooper envisioned and then uses 21st century materials science to push it further than Cooper ever thought possible. The Christensen Arms Ridgeline Scout weighs 5 8/10 pounds. Let that number sit for a moment. 5 8/10 pounds. Cooper's weight ceiling was 7 pounds, and he considered that a hard maximum, not a target. The Ruger Gunsite Scout, the most popular scout rifle in America, runs right up against that ceiling. The Christensen Arms Ridgeline Scout comes in nearly a full pound and a half lighter in a rifle, chambered in 3/0 Winchester, or if you want to step up, 300 Winchester Magnum. How does Christensen Arms achieve that weight? Carbon fiber, not as a cosmetic touch, not as a marketing checkbox. The barrel is a carbon fiber wrapped steel core, a construction method borrowed directly from precision long-range competition, shooting where every ounce saved is a competitive advantage, and accuracy cannot be compromised. The stock is carbon fiber reinforced. The result is a rifle that feels almost implausibly light in your hands. The first time you pick it up, like your brain is waiting for the rest of the weight to arrive, and it never does. But light means nothing if it doesn't perform. So let's talk about what this rifle actually does downrange. The Ridgeline Scout delivers sub-MDOA accuracy from the factory. Christensen Arms backs that with a written guarantee, not a marketing suggestion, a contractual promise. At 400 yards in 3/0 Winchester, you are well inside Cooper's defined performance envelope with margin to spare. At 500 yards, you're still in the conversation in a way that several other rifles on this list simply aren't. Now step up to 300 Winchester Magnum. This is where the claim I made in the introduction becomes real. The 300 Win Mag generates muzzle energy in the range of 3,500 to 4,000 foot-pounds, depending on the load. For context, that is enough energy to defeat the steel plate on light armored vehicles. Technically classified as anti-material capability in certain military applications. In a 5 8/10 pound bolt-action rifle with a 16-inch barrel that you can carry all day without your shoulders filing a formal complaint. No other rifle on this list offers you that option. You can run 3/0 for hunting for standard defensive use for ammunition commonality. And if your scenario escalates to something that demands more, you reconfigure into 300 Win Mag and you have a capability that most people associate with much larger, much heavier dedicated platforms. The forward-mounted optic rail is present and correctly positioned. The trigger is Christensen Arms Match Grade Unit, adjustable, consistent, and in a completely different class from anything in this price range from a production manufacturer. The fluted bolt reduces weight further while improving aesthetics. Look like what it is, a serious piece of precision engineering, not a budget survival tool. What are the legitimate criticisms? The price. At $1,800 to $2,200 depending on configuration, the Ridgeline Scout is a significant investment. Carbon fiber barrels, while extremely accurate, have a different heat profile than traditional steel-sustained rapid fire, will shift your point of impact. As the barrel heats, which matters in a defensive scenario involving multiple engagements. And 300 Win Mag ammunition, while powerful, is not as universally available as 3-Hot in a scavenging context. These are real trade-offs that deserve honest acknowledgement. But here is the fundamental argument for why the Christensen Arms Ridgeline Scout sits at number 1 on this list. Cooper's entire scout rifle philosophy was built around one central idea, that the constraints of weight, length, and capability are not fixed. They are engineering problems waiting for solutions. In 1965, building a sub-6-pound rifle in a powerful cartridge with match-grade accuracy was not achievable at a practical price point. The materials didn't exist. The manufacturing processes didn't exist. They exist now. And the Christensen Arms Ridgeline Scout is what happens when Cooper's philosophy meets the full capability of modern materials. Science, it is lighter than he thought possible. It is more accurate than he dared specify. And in its Magnum configuration, it is more powerful than his original framework even considered. This is not just the best scout rifle on this list. It is the most complete expression of what the scout rifle concept was always trying to become. Here's what I want you to take away from this video, and it's more important than any specific rifle on this list. Jeff Cooper didn't invent the scout rifle because he had a favorite gun he wanted to justify. He invented the concept because he asked a hard question: what does one rifle need to be if it has to do everything? And then he followed that question wherever the logic led, regardless of what was comfortable or conventional. That's the real lesson here. Not the Christensen, not the Steyr, not the CZ. The lesson is the discipline of asking that question honestly about your own situation. Before you spend $1, ask yourself 3 things. First, what is the realistic threat environment you're preparing for? Urban collapse looks different from rural wilderness survival, and your rifle selection should reflect that reality, not someone else's. Second, what is your honest physical capacity? A 5 8/10 pound rifle means nothing if you can't shoot it accurately under stress because you haven't trained with it. The best survival rifle is the one you've put 1,000 rounds through, not the one that looks best on paper. Third, what does your ammunition and logistics picture actually look like? The most capable rifle in the world becomes a club when you run out of the one cartridge it chambers, and nothing compatible exists within 50 miles. Answer those 3 questions honestly. Then come back to this list, and the right rifle will be obvious. That's the top 7 SHTF scout rifles that can genuinely replace your entire arsenal. From the accessible reliability of the Ruger Gunsite Scout at number 7 to the logistics genius of the CZ527, Carbine at number 2 to the sub-6-pound Magnum precision of the Christensen Arms Ridgeline Scout. At number 1, every rifle on this list is a legitimate answer to Cooper's question. They just answer it differently. Now I want to hear from you. Did your rifle make the list? Is there a scout format rifle I overlooked that you think deserves a spot? And from the comment prompt earlier, if you already dropped your 60-second grab rifle in the comments, go back and check what other people said. That conversation is genuinely worth reading. If this video gave you something useful, a new perspective, a rifle to research, a framework for thinking about your survival loadout, hit the like button. It takes 2 seconds, and it helps this channel reach people who are actually trying to build serious, thoughtful preparedness plans rather than just collecting gear. Subscribe if you're not already here. Every week on this channel, we go deep on the tactical and philosophical side of firearms survival planning and real-world preparedness. No fluff, no clickbait for its own sake, just the information you need to make decisions you can defend. And next week, we're going deep on the best SHTF calibers ranked by survival utility, not just stopping power, not just availability. Every variable that actually matters when the grid goes down and the gun store is closed. You're not going to want to miss that.